So thank you very much for the warm welcome to Guelph and all the wonderful environmental and green leadership that you folks are showing. We were hearing something about it this afternoon, and it's exciting. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about who I am and what I do and why I say that climate change is everything, and then something about opportunities for action. So I have the honor at the moment of being your environmental commissioner. I will be the last environmental commissioner of Ontario. So I'm nonpartisan. I was appointed unanimously by all the members of the provincial parliament to serve them, all of them, and through them all of you, and with two main functions. One is that I am the guardian of the Environmental Bill of Rights, which is a very special and unusual statute that we have to give Ontarians the right to participate in significant environmental decisions of the provincial government. And the other is to report to the members and through them to you on these three quiet little topics: energy, environment, and climate. So it's my job to be nonpartisan but not neutral on the issues on which the parties that I serve most ferociously disagree. Fundamentally, it's my perhaps naive hope that facts matter in public policy, that public policy should be made on the basis of facts, and it's my job to try to tell those facts as best I can without fear or favor. And we do this in a number of different ways. We have a really excellent website, eco.on.ca. How many people here have used our website? Great, good to see so many hands. Everybody else, you can find lots of information there in both official languages. So you can find all our reports there. One of the other tools we have there, I don't know if I can make this work. Anyway, you can see there's a red arrow pointing near the bottom of the slide. So would you, if the government complies with the Environmental Bill of Rights, which sometimes they do, they are required to post notice of any significant environmental proposal or decision on the environmental registry. Would you like to know when that happens? Yes? Yes? Okay. So, best way to do that is to go to our website and put your email address and the keywords you want in there. We will send you a free email notice whenever the government posts an environmentally significant decision or a proposal that has that keyword in it, and that will give you the opportunity to go speak to your MPP about it. Now, I mentioned that I'm required to do 3 annual reports a year, one on each of these topics: energy, environment, and climate. I'm here mostly to talk about the climate report. On that central ring in the middle, we've got summaries of some of the reports. They're also all available on our website. If you can use hard copies of the summaries or the reports, just let our office know. We do this work at public expense. We want you to have them. And we know people are more likely to look at the reports if they've been able to look at something on one page first. So if you don't remember anything else I said tonight, I hope you remember this. I was an environment and energy lawyer for 40 years before I became commissioner, and I thought I had a pretty good sense as to how bad things are. And I've been completely blown away since I became commissioner as how much more serious climate change is, how much faster it's moving than we see from the newspapers, how much it's affecting everything I care about. So, is it as bad as we thought? It's worse, and getting worse really quick. Climate change, it isn't just about polar bears, it isn't just about coral reefs, it isn't just about people far away or later. It's here right now. Much more is ahead, and we are determining that future at the moment. Now, you hear a lot in the newspapers about, well, scientists say something by 2100. Honestly, I haven't met anybody who cares much about 2100. It's too far away. But does anybody here care about a small person? I'm very fond of these two, although they're really noisy. And if they get to live the kind of life expectancies that we do, they will be alive in 2100. So when we're talking about what happens this century, we're talking about what happens in their lifetime. And so when we walk this knife edge, anyone who works on climate, looking at the facts seriously, we walk a knife edge of hope and despair. And there's lots of reason on the facts for despair. But if I only despair, that means I'm not doing anything for them. And so, because I care about them, I have to keep working, and I hope that you will do the same. So we know that we're putting out more climate pollution now than has ever happened in human civilization, and we know that the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the most common greenhouse gas, is now well over 400, permanently over 400 parts per million. When was the last time that humans lived in a world where the carbon dioxide was that high? Anybody know? Never. Humans have never existed when carbon dioxide was this high or anything near it. And it's going up faster and faster. So we're already starting, so we're trapping an enormous amount of heat. We're already starting to see the highest temperatures in human civilization. We're already starting to blow away temperature records for how many temperature records we blow away. Now you can see on this chart how fast carbon dioxide has risen. The 350 is in red because it's the closest thing to a magic number we have. The best estimate we have is the highest level of carbon dioxide we can have in the atmosphere for long and still have the kind of world that existed when I was young, with coral reefs and mountain glaciers and fairly predictable weather. And we know it's not natural cycles because all the natural cycles, orbital wobbles and solar cycles and ice ages can come and go, and carbon dioxide always stayed between 180 and 280 parts per million. And we blew past that in 1860. And 350, the highest safe level of carbon dioxide in the air, we blew past that in 1988. Now we know it takes about a generation between the time that we put carbon pollution into the air and the time that we start to really experience the effects. And about a generation after 1988, what did we start seeing in terms of coral reefs around the world? And mountain glaciers and predictable weather. There's lots of details about climate change that are complicated, but the big facts are pretty simple, and they're very well understood around the world. Virtually all climate scientists, more than 97% of them, all agree on the basics. Now, when people receive bad news, it's my experience that most folks want to hang on tight until normal comes back. And normal, oh, I should say, if people want the slides, Tova, how do they get them? Do you know? We'll find out. All right. You're welcome to take pictures, but if you want the slides, we're glad to distribute them. But this is a really key slide. I'm from an evidence-based profession. How many people here are from evidence-based professions? Okay. Big thing about evidence-based professions, there's only one place to get evidence. It's what's happened already. And we're now moving into a world of things that haven't happened before. But what we do know when we talk about normal is by and large we mean the average of the 20th century. That's what our laws are designed for, that's what our engineering standards are designed for. And the average of the 20th century, whoops, I keep doing this wrong. Dear. All right, anyway, I can't use the pointer. The average of the 20th century is that zero line. And we don't live there anymore, and we know it can't come back, because remember, we've locked in a lot more climate change from what we've emitted in the last generation, which we're not really feeling yet. So normal is gone, and it cannot come back. Now, that's true for the world. It's even more true for Ontario. Ontario is warming much faster than the world average. World average warming is 1 degree centigrade in about a century and a half. Ontario's warmed a degree and a half in not much over half a century. And we're on track for 2.5 to 4 degrees in the next few decades. And as you can see, it's not the same in all the different parts of Ontario. Well, the color doesn't show very well, but there's parts of Ontario where for the last 4 decades, growing seasons have been increasing 13 days a decade. That's lightning speed if you're a moose or a tree. But there's also parts of Ontario, which you can see in blue, where we haven't seen any increase in growing season at all. Climate change affects different parts of the province differently. I know people hate seeing stats about Toronto. We've got really good stats about Toronto, and I don't have really good stats about Guelph. But Toronto has warmed more than 3 degrees in a century and a half, when the world as a whole has only warmed 1 degree. And the farther we go north in Ontario, the faster the warming's happening. Now, what you won't hear me talking about global warming. Global warming isn't just about averages, it's about extremes, and we've already got 4 times the climate extremes here just since I was young. And that's in Canada and the US. We're some of the luckiest people in the world. You can see these extremes whenever you see the news. These are all pictures from Ontario in the last year or two. That's what's happening to insured losses. And that's These figures are adjusted. There's no inflation in these figures. There's no wealth effect in these figures. This is true increases in insured losses in Ontario just from extreme weather. Anybody think this might affect the cost of insurance? Anybody think it might affect the availability of insurance? And we also have, it's not just money, we've got health impacts, Lyme disease, West Nile, diseases that were never known in Ontario before, which are now more and more widespread, affecting plants, animals, fish. Those are fish dying because the water is warm, lost the oxygen, they succumb to disease. We know there's impacts of increasing unpredictability for food and farming. Yes, it's great that the growing season is longer, but does that help you if you have droughts and floods? If it does help you if you have more erosion or more wind damage or more pests? We know that precipitation is changing. As you can see, there's parts of Ontario that are now noticeably drier in the summer over the last several decades, and that includes some of the areas around here. And we know also that precipitation in the winter is increasing, especially in some places, and some of that which used to be snow is now coming as rain, such as we're going to get tomorrow. And what else? There's already millions of climate migrants. So is it too late? So people always ask me, is it too late? And I have to say, too late for what? Is it too late for that young person you care about to have the same life that we had? Yes. Is it too late for us here to avoid having to make some real difficult choices? Yes, we threw away that time. Is it too late to make a big difference in what's ahead? We're in that moment right now. We've got a very small handful of years, and that's all there is. We don't have any more time to waste. So what can we do to fight climate change? Well, we know the basics. We have to significantly reduce our climate pollution. We have to do it now, and we have to adapt. We can't do just one or the other. Neither will work alone. We know that this isn't just something that we have to do, this is something we want to do. There are enormous benefits to reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. Ontario's economy is still 80% based on fossil fuels. Anybody know how much we spend importing those fossil fuels every year? How much money do we pour out of the economy every single year? Between, best estimate we've got is between about $16 and $24 billion a year. Every year. If we were 10% more efficient and we kept an extra $2 billion in the Ontario economy, can anybody think of something good we might do with it? What would that do for jobs for young people? It's better for public health. Climate change and fossil fuel combustion is now the largest threat for public health in the world, according to the World Health Organization, the Lancet Commission. It's the biggest threat to children's health. We can have a much better world if we reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. There's lots in our climate report about it. I hope you will go and look at it. But we basically do know what works, and we proved it. Number one, pollution shouldn't be free. When pollution is free, you get a lot more of it. When pollution costs something, financial people have to know how much there is, and they have a financial incentive to reduce it. Carbon pricing really works, which is why the Nobel Prize in Economics was given to the man who proved this just after Ontario tore ours up. Second thing we have to do is invest in solutions. And again, most of the cap and trade money in Ontario, 3/4 of it was going to taxpayer-funded groups like universities and schools and hospitals to make them more efficient so they don't waste so much money every year in their heating. Grand River Hospitals, one of the poster kids, they're saving $850,000 a year, they tell me, because they've been able to make their buildings a little more efficient. And that's money that can go back into patient care. And the third thing is regulating polluters, as we did in Ontario when we closed the coal plants. So we were doing so much right here, closing the coal plants, putting a price on carbon, investing that money back in solutions, a little bit of work on adaptation. And we know that cap and trade was working. It was starting to work really well. It wasn't given much time, but I could see it working all over Ontario. We've got some of the things in our report. And we know that pretty good use was being made of that money. In many cases, it brought 4 times as much money into Ontario in matching private sector investment. But now what? Until June, Ontario was was really prominent as a climate leading jurisdiction in the world. There's trillions of dollars sloshing around the world looking for ways to invest in a green economy, in a low carbon economy. And Ontario was prominent in those rooms until June. But now we've torn it all up. We've canceled our climate programs. We've canceled most of our energy efficiency programs. We've canceled 752 clean energy contracts. We're busy canceling other environmental protections like the Greenbelt Act and the Clean Water Act and the Endangered Species Act and other things which are in danger or being damaged or lost. We do know that only 1% of the people who commented on the Cap and Trade Cancellation Act supported getting rid of cap and trade. But what they are doing is silencing me. So I'm sure that'll make it all better. This isn't something scientists can solve. It's not something lawyers can solve. It's not even something politicians can solve. This is a big job for all of us. And then the province won't lead, well, who can and who will? Well, everybody else can. If the province won't act on climate, does that mean the rest of us should sit home and do nothing? Will we have a livable world if we do that? There's no one who's going to rescue us if we don't do this ourselves. So how many people would like to have some hope? I only know one recipe for hope. It's to start with knowledge. Look the facts in the face, even though they're not very pretty. But the second thing is to look at each other and find a way to work together. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something, and I think that's the only way we can have any kind of hope. So what can we do? At every level, individuals, organizations, cities. We have to reduce our carbon footprint, ideally 5% every year. We need to get ready to adapt to the wilder, weirder weather that's coming. And the most important thing of all is that we have to speak up. I know it feels un-Canadian, but we must speak up, and we mustn't get tired of speaking up. We have to talk about climate all the time. It's the most important thing. It's going to change everything else. So how do you do it? Well, there's really good research on this now. Simple, clear messages repeated often by a variety of trusted voices. And they can't just be lawyers from Toronto. But each of you is a trusted voice to someone, to some people, and you know people who can be trusted voices. Everyone who can speak up has to. And you can get started now. So I know that there's going to be a wonderful trade fair tonight, but here's 3 things to question, 3 things you can think about. Who are doing good things that you can support? With time, with money, with encouragement. Who can you work with? We need to collaborate on climate change. This can't be a question of just everyone who's interested in climate issues and environmental issues being fissured into our little groups and not working together. If we do that, we'll be totally ineffective. We have to find ways to work with people that we don't 100% agree with, but with whom we share this central desire for the survival of the world, for the well-being of our children. And be a trusted voice. Find ways to build bridges. Find other people you can work with. Find other people you can trust. Go meet with your politicians at every level. Politicians really care what they hear from their constituents, right? Right? Letters are good. Going to see them is better. Go to see them with other people who aren't just like you. Go and talk. See how well you can help. Be part of the solution. I'm doing everything I can. Will you? Thank you.